about, like the importance of basically a healthcare worker. But I would also say, like, the second part is, like, because we were so close and upfront with these healthcare workers, we could also see how vulnerable they are. Even they are at this point of time. And we could see them as people just like us, with their own families, their own friends, getting worried, sick about their child. This kind of, when the lines blur, that is something that definitely happened with us when it comes to any healthcare worker, for that matter. We had spent like long hours at Max with the medical director there, because we were constantly filming and we had to build that relationship and everything. And she was somebody who had a child, 6 7 years, I think, who was basically 6 7 years old. And she was basically telling us like how the pandemic has changed even the family dynamics, like what happens in the family of healthcare workers and everything. So I would say, like, those were the kind of insights which we usually don't get to hear. And those were the kinds of insights we got from the doctors and nurses. So we saw them as people, as vulnerable people. And of course, we realized the huge importance they have in any city, nation, or a community. I would also want to know, Vinita ma'am, like, what was the change in perception that you had towards
So
healthcare?
I work in the corporate sector, and I also work with the government, and I was very much in the front end trying to figure out the ways. You were at the hospital, I was in the war room also, and I saw a lot of anger and frustration in the junior staff. And there were also things like, they were left without much resources, training. You mentioned training. We made 92 what we call the red books for, protocols kept changing every day. But what I really saw in the healthcare workers was a lot of distress, because like you said, the lines were getting blurred between personal and professional, grieving nurses, grieving staff. Also, there were questions of, we have a very elderly healthcare workforce. Mostly it was the young nurses and the young doctors only in the wards, if you noticed. A lot of specialists were on telemedicine, right? So there was a lot of anger also. And I was feeling, in fact, I used to feel so bad for the patients, because, in COVID wards, patients were left alone. There were no relatives. Elderly were left alone, right? Nurses were stretched. They couldn't even help any patient do pruning. Before pruning anyone, they would be called by somebody else who needed an oxygen. So it was a madhouse. I really at that time felt the word that Sharda said, that as a community, if people had not connected and helped each other, there was the healthcare workforce also needed that support. And that was not really there. The mental support when they went back home, I don't know who was supporting them. I was lucky that I had set up with my other friends in college, alumna, a healthcare group where I was reading things. The healthcare workers were not there. People were just criticizing and, shouting. I went to Apollo once, there was a riot. People were hitting the nurses and the doctors. So my view was that there is a lot of arrogance that healthcare doctors are, they say doctors are very arrogant in life in general. You don't get appointments. But at that time, you used a very good word, was vulnerability of the healthcare workforce was out. So I would just say that I hope this is just one documentary. You really need to make a sequel now in normal times to compare maybe what happens in a cancer ward with the same nursing staff. Why is it that COVID gave us, maybe because of the numbers, that jolt? But I think nursing and doctors go through similar emotions in everyday life when they're fighting and navigating death. And I think they just become made of a different DNA.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like, I would 100% agree with you. And I would also say that, like, personally, if it was so physically and mentally excruciating for me to do to just film a documentary, like, I can't imagine how difficult it would
I
be for
was,
any
Prashun,
healthcare
just
worker. Yeah.
one line. I was not there all the time, but I used to say 100 no's. People used to cry, call me. Whoever got my number would WhatsApp me and just beg me for, beds and oxygen. And it was breaking me. The first, and I was myself, I came down with COVID. My mother was down with COVID and admitted. And even in the ward, I would look at the messages and try and figure out through the network if somebody could get a bed. But it changed, it transformed me for sure from inside. I mean, I realized people can be as alone in a crowd. At the same time, people can really get a lot of comfort in a crowd if they want to reach out. And but ultimately it was a huge test of resilience.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, Vinita. Anybody else would like to say something? Mr. Chima, you've been here for a long time. Would you like to say something?
Yeah.
Shanta? Yeah, Mr.
Yeah.
Chima, go ahead.
Yeah. Prashun, I really appreciate the work you have done in this. Especially nowadays, we need the people, young people from like you, to address all these issues, because most of the other young guys today, they wanted to go to only the computer classes, the computer engineering, IT sector, and really I appreciate the work you have done, and keep it up. As suggested by the ma'am, you should make some sequels also, so that this is a very unusual. This is a different scenario in which you have make this documentary. I would request maybe after 1 or 2 months, you just make another attempt for this. Maybe you can study the behavior of the nurses as well as doctors and patients, because I appreciate the work you have done. Please
Thank
keep
you
it
so
up.
much, sir. Thank you so
Mr.
much.
Chima, before you stop, can you please give a brief introduction about yourself? Where are you from and what do you do?
Yeah, ma'am, basically I am an agriculture graduate and MBA from rural marketing. From the last 23 years, I am working in the mint lines. Basically, it's flavor and fragrances division. I am working in the Callison's company as a chief buyer for their mint sourcing from India. Basically, I am an agriculture graduate, and during this lockdown period, I spend most of time in my home villages, so that I can also study the behavior of the farmers and other things. And during this farmer agitations also, I got a lot of chances to interact with the farmers as well as the people who are suffering in the villages also. So I also felt that there is a lot of scope for doing good work, especially in the cases of the healthcare. There is a tremendous scope for the improvement. Maybe there are the small things, because government is not able to reach out those rural areas. I felt, and we are trying and working to up to some extent how we can try to make small things available in the villages or in the remote areas. That is my core objective now.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Over to you, Prashun. Yeah, you could first answer his question.
I didn't get that question.
Mr. Chima was talking about again
some more documentaries.
Yeah.
Whether you would.
Sir, to be honest,
sequels.
as I was mentioning to Vinita ma'am, I don't know how the healthcare workers and they do what they do. They're definitely built out of a different DNA altogether, because I don't know, the whole experience has been so emotionally and physically draining for both me and Suyash, that and I don't think it used to happen before. Personally, I'm not super scared of hospitals or everything, but it's just spending so much time inside and witnessing uh, so many distressing scenes, because, and not just doctors, but also patients and everybody. I just feel like in some way it has really taken a toll. Suyash was actually mentioning this earlier to me, that there's this thing of PTSD of which soldiers face and everything. We've had a very mild form of PTSD, I feel, where we feel like the whole project has actually drained us out completely. We're immensely proud of the work we have done, but it has just been that kind of experience where I don't know if we would want to put us through that again. But definitely, this is something like a film on the healthcare workers is definitely something that we should do, and it's something that we'll definitely work on.
Sharda, I have one appeal or question also to Prashun. Can I ask?
Of course, please.
So, Prashun, one thing that I heard through the pandemic, and this is related to your documentary, I cannot classify your documentary as an optimist, positive, or a negative documentary. Okay. And I used to get very irritated at times because I was in so many interactions when people would say, oh, tell us positive stories. We are sick of this. It was in the peak of COVID. We don't want to hear any more negative. And I used to wonder, what does this mean? This is the reality. You cannot have me singing only when people around me are going through these challenges. Your documentary, and I must compliment you, I was initially was having goosebumps. I've watched your full documentary. I at that time shared it also with a lot of my colleagues. Initially, it was like, I was a little scared because I didn't want to relive that moment. But when I watched through it, it was amazing. It was not negative. It was there like it was happening in front of my eyes. But what my question to you is, how were you able to maintain that balance in your documentary of not going over the cliff either? You showed happy moments, you showed the thoughts. It was a very, I won't even say factual, but it was coming out of your bottom of your heart, the way things were happening and there was no positive or negative. So I'm in certain groups of people are like deliberately avoiding the talk of COVID so that they could, according to them, that was negative. So let's focus on positive. What did you feel? You must have encountered similar moments in editing your documentary. Did you have those borderlines of positive, negative, or it just flew the way it did?
Uh, I think, see, our intention is always to make, like, but I would say, like, I don't know how to frame this actually. Wait. Yeah. So when we are taught in journalism school, we are taught to be objective. We are taught to be like completely balanced and show every viewpoint. But personally, my personal view, and I don't think everybody will share this opinion maybe, but personally, I feel like journalism can never be like, neutral. It has to have a personal stake into it. It has to, because any issue for that matter can't be neutral. Like there are positive sides with negative sides. So our intention with the films that we make is basically to focus on just the characters and not to make any kind of commentary on whatever is happening, like in the political side of things or in the governance side of things. Because I think if we start doing that, personally, I would get so angry at things that the tone of the whole documentary would be very angry, I feel. So my like our attempt and our intention is always to focus on the characters and go wherever the character is sort of taking us, and in the end sort of frame it in a way where it all makes sense like a story. And I think, but of course, like even with this documentary, a lot of people have said that this is anti-government. A lot of people have said that that's what I'm saying. Like, so I think we can't please everyone for that matter, because people will find like some kind of what do you call agenda in everything that one makes. So in that particular sense, like our intention is to just focus on the characters, let the characters talk, let the characters sort of tell the story themselves, and wherever we can sort of connect the dots, wherever we can sort of make it easier for the characters to make sense of things and everything, that's where we sort of come into the picture. And in the end, like the totality of a film should work. So but yeah, I would say like the tone is supposed to be not very negative or positive, but to just show reality as it is, which
Very
is,
well
yeah.
said. Yeah, very well said. I hope all corporate communication healthcare workforce watches it. I learned a lot from your
Yes.
documentary on how to behave.
And I would request you to share the link if possible on this chat as well. And if you could WhatsApp it to me, I'll also ensure that at least my broadcast list, I can WhatsApp it across to all of them, because I think at least our guests here would love to watch it and give their opinions on it. And wonderful that you could keep yourself balanced. Yes, who would like?
That's me, Prasanjit.
Yes,
Another thing I just
go
wanted
ahead.
to add to it is
Yes.
that, I don't know whether it was by chance or by this thing, you see you see a Sikh, you see a Hindu, you see a Muslim, and you see a Christian in
Yes.
the whole character. Was that a chance or was it planned? How was like
It
what
was it
Come on
basically,
video, Prasenjit. We'd like to see you also. Thank you.
it
Yes,
was by
Prashun.
chance. It was by chance because I don't know how it actually happened also, in the sense, because till the last moment, the community worker at the Gurudwara, he was not even supposed to be in the documentary. Like it's just the whole situation sort of put forward the immense work that the Sikh community and the Gurudwaras and how they were helping the community and everybody sort of. So I would say like that was a very sort of it was a coincidence in that sense. Like the nurse being a Christian, the graveyard worker being a Muslim, the doctor being a Hindu, and the community worker being a Sikh. So I would say like that all happened by chance, and I'm like it happened by chance, but it's something that I'm very happy about.
Yes.
Like personally, because I don't know how it happened, but it happened, and that's something that.
Oh, I'm so happy
makes
to
me
hear
happy.
this, because it's so wonderful to know that, you can organically also, it kind of reiterates what we've always spoken about India.
Yeah. It's almost like
Miracle
mile sur mera tumhara type of
India
cheese.
sabka
Like,
hai, and when you pick
exactly,
up four random Indians, it's very likely that you're going to pick up one Hindu and
exactly,
and a
exactly.
Christian, and
Definitely.
you're not going to have all of them exactly, clones of each other.
Right.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Prasenjit, because we would have it did strike me, but I thought we should probably steer clear of that, because I didn't know if he had deliberately done it. But I'm so happy to hear that it
Maybe
wasn't
that,
a
yeah.
deliberate attempt.
Thank you.
I thought it was a deliberate, like how most movie makers do in Hindi movies, where you have these
Coincidences.
benevolent Muslim uncle and one
Right.
auntie.
Like I don't know. Like yeah, there are all the stereotypes and everything, but
Yeah, the stereotypes, but it was
uh,
wonderful. If it wasn't a stereotype, it's
it
beautiful.
wasn't like I really don't know how it happened, but I just think it kind of shows that everybody coming together and
Excellent.
doing all that they can.
And how COVID really didn't spare anyone. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody
Absolutely.
asked for your religion or your identity before affecting you. Shanta Ramurthy, you're an old friend, and I'm so happy you're here. So I'd really love to have you say a few words. You'll have to unmute yourself, Shanta. Shanta, you'll have to unmute yourself. I can't hear you.
Yeah. No, I said my best wishes to Prashun. He's done a wonderful job, and I'm very tempted to see the documentary now.
Yes,
Thank
And
we'll
I
share
wish
it.
you all the very best, and many more such things should come up. Undisclosed, unknown things you have presented in a very nice way. Whatever little I saw, I'm really tempted now to see.
Yeah, I hope you do enjoy it. Thank you.
Yeah, I will see it.
Thank you, Shanta. Anybody else would like to speak? I have so many of you here. I'm really honored and touched that all of you have taken the time to be here. Mr. Jyotika Sengupta, I think, is your grandmother.
Yeah.
Or
She's a
Ujjwal,
proud
Maya,
grandmother.
Amit Singhal, Aditi, Sandeep. Sandeep's my husband. He's also here. Mr. Chanchal Das Gupta is here. Miss Madhu Roy. Ujjwal, please feel free. We have to.
Yeah, I just found it really interesting how I'm just, I study philosophy and stuff, and we think about sort of like the medical gaze and, and thinking about debates like, people are arguing whether we should do vaccines or not, people have those doubts, but then, those are just ideas in people's minds. But when you actually look at reality, I mean, medical profession is a practice, so there's so much that doctors themselves don't know in general, I would say. But the COVID-19 just magnified that even more. And I would just imagine, well, I'll watch the documentary, but I could just imagine that being in that place where experts are supposed to know everything, and when they don't know that thing, they're just literally, sometimes they don't, did you, Prashun, did you like see like, really people, sort of doctors with opposing opinions and like conflicts like that,
Yeah. We did see.
Ujjwal, that was Ujjwal Shehrawat. Could you come on video, please, so that we can see you and also know who's speaking for the rest of us?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's Ujjwal.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ujjwal, I'd say that because we met so many doctors of different kinds and everything, like even the frontline workers, like they had also differing views on everything, to be honest, like be it vaccines, like or which vaccine is the best and all those things. Because
Yeah.
I think as the pandemic went along, they, like you mentioned, actually, they, along with us, were learning more and more about it. And at the start, whatever preconceived notions they would hold about the pandemic or about anything, like they would actually change like over time. This is actually something like which happened with the nurse, which happened with the doctor, which happened with the graveyard caretaker also, and even the doctors who would like who would uh, discuss things amongst themselves. Like we could see like varying lines of thought, be it in the sense that if a vaccine, like if a homeopathic practitioner was basically saying that a vaccine isn't necessary, another person was saying that the vaccine is necessary and everything. I think these are all like varying schools of medical thought, I guess, and also like some kind of personal views on also things, which
Yeah.
a lot of people were sort of talking about at that point of time.
Yeah, it's like a microcosm of like maybe the overall
Exactly.
debates in general that we all have. I mean, doctors are also not immune to them, I would imagine. And in the reality, you get to see those things, even though, our presentation as, doctors is positions of authority, in positions of authority, they may say it in a, standard way, but in reality, when they're just talking amongst each other, I would imagine, it's like a lot of uncertainty and all of that. Yeah. So I'll
Absolutely.
watch the documentary, and then I'll understand it better, hopefully. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else would like to say anything or ask Prashun? Who's this? Can you identify yourself? Is this A.K. Gupta speaking? I don't know who's. Okay. Anybody, please. Maya, would you like to say something? Amit Singhal-ji, Madhu Roy is there. We have A.K. Gupta. We have Sandeep, Aditi.
No, just to
Yes, Maya.
Just to congratulate the filmmaker and his parents for having the courage to let him do what he had to do, because what we saw was fear. One of the predominant emotions was fear, and the reason that the healthcare workers would respond to this differently from cancer, for instance, is the fact that it's an extremely contagious illness.
Yes.
There are protocols, the whole PPE is so alienating. There's so much fear. It's very different, the kind of care you can give a COVID patient compared to the kind of care you can give a cancer patient. You can touch a cancer patient, you can hold them, all of that palliative care. So
you don't contract cancer by just, healing or taking care of the patient.
So the patient and the caregiver both are under a very different kind of psychological stress because of the communicability of the disease, the extremely contagious nature of it. So it's not just the numbers. I think it was just that, people were forced to just be inhuman because, the human touch is so essential to us in healing, particularly. Patients need it, doctors need it. Doctors need to touch you to gauge, what's going on. And most doctors were doing online consultations, and my doctor was going pretty crazy because he couldn't, tell, right? He said, I wanted to, and there were no hospital rooms available, so I had to be treated at home. He said, I would have hospitalized you long ago because, then you need to be watched all the time. You need to be, so there's so much diagnostics involved with just, the physical proximity. I got my chest examined much later, like 1 month after recovery by a pulmonologist, because the doctors were simply not, they have to listen to your lungs and so on. So it's the whole thing is so alienating. And I think that's one of the challenges of this, which is unique. And so it's extremely courageous of you to do this and to bring truth and empathy to our understanding of the situation. So just thank you. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Maya. I agree with you. I mean, I think anybody else in his position would have happily stayed home and, probably enjoyed the unexpected holiday, but here was Prashun out right there on the war front, as you would have it. Anybody else would like to say anything? Aditi, would you like to say something? Mr. Gupta? Yes, Aditi.
I'd just like to ask one question. We
Yeah.
know a lot about how families were finding it very difficult to get in touch with their loved ones who are in the hospital. Did you witness any chaos in that matter? I'm sure there would have been some frustration from that point of view as well. So was there any situation like that where things had gotten out of hand in a hospital setting? Because I have seen reports of that also happening.
Aditi, can we see you also?
Oh, okay, 1 second.
That's yeah, Aditi, I think you should show your face. That's my daughter, so I have to apologize for her.
No need to apologize. She's a beautiful girl.
Carry on, Aditi, ask your question, yeah.
She blushed and she put it off, you know.
No, keep it on, Aditi, keep your video on. That's the protocol.
Yes. Yes. So, yeah, I basically wanted to know if you also witnessed any situation that was similar.
We did witness situations like that. And basically, a disturbing thing that we had witnessed there was, it is somewhat related to your question, but I just want to share this whole experience where both the husband and the wife, they were inside the hospital, they were inside the COVID ward, then they were recovering. But basically, they were on different floors. Like the husband was in the ICU, and the wife was at the emergency. And while we were filming inside, like because we ourselves with the cameras, like, and everything, we do look like nurses, like inside, you know, like we do look like healthcare workers ourselves. And patients were regularly calling us, and sort of, because they were mistaking us for nurses basically. So they were calling, so this husband, he was calling us, and what happened was, he asked about his wife, like, can you check, like, how my wife is doing and everything. And so we just went to the nurse, to doctor, and we told them that the husband is basically asking about his wife, and he just wants to check, like, if everything is okay, and how is his wife doing, because it has been 2 days since he hasn't spoken to his wife and everything. And that's when the doctor told us that the wife had already passed away like 2 days back. So we never got to witness. This was actually something which also sort of shook us, because it was completely unexpected. It was completely unexpected, and cases like these cases where also, like, the family really desperately wanted to speak to the patient inside and everything, like, those were very common. We didn't really witness any kind of commotion, because I don't know, we didn't actually. But what happened was, the nurses and the doctors, they were regularly trying to strike up some conversations over video calls. That used to happen. And even though, I think, which was Dolly, the nurse, was telling us that this is against protocol, but she still does it. So this was actually, I think, one of the personal kind of preferences in that sense. Like, some nurses would do it, some nurses won't. And but they were trying to sort of make people communicate through video call. But we didn't witness any, like, serious commotion inside the ward and everything. Like, we did, of course, see commotions, like, why like outside around the counters where the billing and all happens, like people screaming at the hospital administrators about why the bill is so high, and how come and all. But I think those things are very natural in that sense. So but regarding that, I would say only that happened. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think anyone else wants to say anything? Mr. Singhal? Probably most of them are just in awe and quite overwhelmed with what you've done and how you managed to show so much of courage and strength. So I think you've also inspired with your story, while you've also been a COVID survivor yourself. And I think bringing this whole pandemic together and putting it in this kind of a documentary form, kind of, and the best part of it, as Maya was mentioning and Vinita also, that you didn't kind of end it either on a very promising note or on a despondent note. So it was just as it was, and that kind of helps us to view it today also and not feel scared, or because we know we went through that. All of us have been through that. We're still likely to go through it again, but at least you've documented it, so we have some reference point. We know that it's everyone is there. Health workers are equally in it. So are people from gurudwaras, people who are filmmakers like you, and parents, brave parents who allow filmmakers like you and doctors like so many others to go and treat people. Most of the doctors were very young residents, and a niece of mine was also there. So I do know that how they've all literally risked themselves. It's very easy to glorify the Fauji's and keep talking about how wonderful they do at the war front and here, there, and the other. But here are, regular, ordinary people who are never really sung or, treated well, and very often are not even paid enough or looked after enough. And yet they kind of were there in the service of the nation and service of ailing nation, people. There was no enemy to fight who was a known enemy, like in a war situation with the army. So I think we must learn now to honor Desh Bhakts and the real people like yourself, and people who all those health workers, people the grave diggers who came and buried bodies, voluntary workers who came and did it, cremations. There were so many people. And then people like Vinita did. They had these groups who arranged for hospitals, arranged for medicines. So I think there were beautiful stories of courage, beautiful stories of help and assistance that came from all kinds of quarters. And one important thing that has probably run through it all is reach out, speak up. If you have a problem, if you've been infected with COVID, you don't hide and try to hope and wish it away, or blame yourself or blame XYZ about it, but you kind of come out, ask for help, put yourself out there, and I think somewhere or the other it's comes back to you, and organically help reaches you, and you are able to tide over it. I personally have experienced a family member who did not come out, did not speak. And I lost my cousin, of course, lost his wife, and he was in a coma for several days, and is right now just about coming out of the coma and trying to get into some kind of rehabilitative care. It hasn't in no cognitive senses, nothing. And we always felt that they should have probably come out 10 days earlier and told us that they were down and unwell, and probably somebody or the other would have rushed them faster and helped them. So people like you who bring out these films, who show everyone that it's good to share. Everyone was vulnerable. Nurses were vulnerable, doctors were vulnerable. What happened? We lost Prashun. Oh, he's there, right? Everybody
I'm
there. Everybody was vulnerable. So it's nice that we have a film like this to record that and document that. And so I compliment you, Prashun, and wish you all the best. Your father has already given a brief. He kind of revealed that you're working on Sonam Wangchuk. So, so we know that that's where you're headed next, and that I'm sure we look forward to that documentary as well. But anyone wants to say
another thing I wanted to add to it is that
Prashunjit.
during this time of the time of uncertainty, when the whole pandemic was at the top, we could see the unity between all our fellow countrymen. Everybody wanted to help each other in any way, any manner they could.
Yes.
So this type of sense of belongingness or responsibility you seldom see normally in our daily life. So this is one thing actually really moved me, and I always mention that everybody wanted to help each other. Like it was either it's known person or unknown person or relative or anybody, but it was a feeling of togetherness, which we miss in our daily life.
Yes.
So this brought our, I would say that this had, our own conscious, which it is always hidden inside us to help others, but during this time, I could see that everybody, they were distributing food to the hungry people. Everybody was giving shelter to people who were not, find places, any way, oxygen cylinder, whatever way it was. So everybody was, whoever could, were helping each other, their friends and relatives and known people, unknown people. That was a great, I would say, bonding. Or so. Just wanted to add to this.
Very true, Prasenji. That was a really good point you brought out, and certainly it brought us all together, and probably it also drove home the point that either all of us are well, because even if one of us is unwell, all of us are at risk. And so I think that kind of brought us all together. Sumitra, you should say something. You're the mother of Prashun, and you're an old school and college colleague, friend of mine. You're the person who led me to this decision to call Prashun and have him share his views on this panel, on this channel, on this program of mine. So do share what did you feel as a mother? I know a mother's heart can always be a little, soft, and it's always you fear for your children, especially. So how did you?
Maa ki mamta.
Maa ki mamta, all that. But how did you kind of? What were your emotions when he was going there every day and filming inside all those ICUs and wearing those scary PPEs?
Yeah, very true, Shardha. And even Maya had brought up this point. Like, I don't know, as a mother, I guess as a parent, I guess everybody has this kind of a apprehension. Like, when you know where he is visiting. And in fact, Prashun never used to, tell us a lot of things, because he knew that, we'll be scared and, a bit, eventually the tension will be there. And he didn't want to stress us. So he did shift, stayed away from the house for a few months. But then still, like, that fear, the worry, the tension, the stress was always there, even though he was, not staying with us. But we always worried about him. But I was always told, don't show your tension and worry, and don't, discourage him. And I guess one has to really, let go.
True.
And, so finally, I guess they could make it,
Awesome. So good that he could make the film and came back safe and sound, and he's now.
And once in a while he used to come home and narrate a lot of things, incidents, and a lot of things which we staying at home, we didn't realize that certain things were happening out in the world, and like the actual situation outside was really terrifying. And we could really like what you say, aankho dekhi commentary, proper the narration which he used to tell us once he was that also used to really affect us. But anyway,
I can imagine, because I remember quite a few COVID patients coming on this program and telling us that they just stopped listening to the news because there was just so much of horror story happening that even I think many of us also just stopped listening, because we just wanted to keep our morale high and somehow keep our minds positive and believe that everything is going to be fine and we were all going to come out of it. And while right now we are only probably at a lull before the next storm, but even if that is the case, I think we are all better prepared. And we know now that we some of us may not make it, but most of us will, and we will do it together, and we will be there for each other. And definitely hope there are many more such Prashuns who can come out and reach out, because having someone like him coming, I'm sure the nurses and the doctors and the healthcare workers, they must have been so happy to see somebody who really didn't need to be there. I mean, he was just a filmmaker. He need not have done that. He could have sat and filmed Madhuri Dixit instead, but he decided to come and sit here in this terrible place where he had a choice not to be. And so I'm sure their morale was boosted, and that must have helped those patients there. So indirectly they have helped create a positive environment where those nurses don't feel isolated, don't feel that, they were the only ones there, and they're, like some kind of evil fate playing an evil trick on them. So I think that must have been a very reassuring thought for those nurses, that some young ordinary person who didn't need to be there was there for them, coming and talking to them, sharing their story, sharing his story. So it was nice. And I think that was a very nice part of Prashun's story. Anyone else would like to say anything? Otherwise, we can close the session. Amit Singhal, Sandeep, would you like to say anything?
No,
Sandeep.
ma'am.
How are you?
Good, sir, good. My best wishes to Prashun, and I would say keep it up.
We have your nani now, Prashun. Yes, Jyotika ji.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that I'm very proud that he is my grandson.
Awesome. Of course, you should be proud of him.
And he's such a, reasonable young man and caring and doesn't brag about himself. He's a very different kind of a young person. And we have a different kind of relation with him. Our thing is, I'm not the typical grandmother. I'm just like his friend, and I can say so many things to him. He can also confide in me. So I'm really proud that he's become such a good filmmaker and a journalist. And the credit goes to his parents also, because they gave him the full support of the thing. That's what I just wanted to tell you.
Thank you, thank you. You're rightly proud, and don't leave out your role in molding your daughter. I'm sure Sumitra is your daughter, because I see Sengupta as the surname, and so don't rule out your role in whatever Prashun has become today.
Actually, he's following my father's footsteps. My father was a journalist,
awesome.
So he's following his footsteps. But he was a journalist. He used to write. He never used to make films and that kind of thing. And he was quite well known in West Bengal and all over the world also, because he was a slightly leftist, had a leftist inclination.
Okay.
But Prashun is different. That is totally different. And we all are, my husband and myself are very proud of him. And thank you, Sharda, for getting us the chance, giving him the chance to speak out.
Thank you. My pleasure. I mean, this is meant for sharing and caring for people who have experienced COVID in whichever manner. So I did say that it should be somebody who either suffered it or was a caregiver or was a bereaved family member. And today we had a filmmaker who's been through the entire experience and has really seen so many real life instances and cases. So this was another facet which I didn't really imagine I would have. So I'm really happy, and I'm glad that I could have someone like Prashun on this program, because every Saturday I try to bring a different perspective to this whole pandemic, so that we kind of reach out to the maximum number of people. We've spoken about isolation. I'm waiting for Ujjwal Shehrawat here to speak about how a student who went through this period and how it has impacted him, both as an individual and as a student, how it impacted his studies, his future career prospects. There's so many things. So we want to gradually, week by week, explore everything and be there for each other, because we know now that we're all kind of locked up in our own homes. We can't really physically sit and meet so many people together. But at least when we come virtually in this manner, we are able to see each other, know about other stories, learn something, get inspired by stories, feel compassion, share, care. I think that's what life is all about. And so it's wonderful that we had all of you, especially Prashun's family here. And I especially thank Maya, Ujjwal, and Amit Singhal, A.K. Gupta ji, Chima ji, Shanta, all of you, Shanta Ramurthy, Aditi, of course, all of you for coming here and spending your time. Special congratulations and thank you to Sumitra and Prasenjit also. And
I would
thank
also
you.
like to add something here,
Yes,
Sharda.
Mitra.
I'd like to thank you for giving us all an opportunity to interact and giving Prashun also a platform to speak about his experiences. Really, it's really nice. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sumitra. Do share your film, Prashun, so that we could also all, I'll also share it and we'll spread the word around. And more and more
Definitely,
people
Shadana.
will watch it. And then we are waiting for the next one with Sonam Wangchuk. Thank you. Thank you all very much. And
Yeah.
let's all,
Thank you. Bye, man.
thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Baya.